It's time for some absolute value. Have you heard of absolute value? Do you know what absolute value is? Well, if the answer happens to be no at this point, don't worry, don't fret. We're going to have to spend a tiny brief amount of time at the beginning of this video making sure you know what absolute value even is. And then we're going to do a quick example using absolute value within a within like just a substitution problem. And then we're going to do a couple of equations with absolute value, which makes it a tiny titch more complicated, but not a whole lot. So let's dive in and take a look. All right, so what is absolute value? Well, absolute value is the symbol for absolute value, first of all, is lines like this, right? Which, depending on context, can mean other things later, but that's in like Algebra 2 or so don't stress about that. But absolute value, we have this, and then we have, excuse me, my goodness, you can have a number a lot of times in here. We're going to see some with more than just a number, and when there's more than just a number and we're doing this within a problem, we treat these essentially like grouping symbols, like parentheses or square brackets or whatever. And we take care of and simplify what's inside of those as much as possible, and then we work outside of there. But we'll do that in an example. So what does absolute value do? So if we have the absolute value of -6, what does that equal? Absolute value of -6 equals +6. That makes sense. That's no big deal, right? So what about the absolute value of +5? What is the absolute value of +5? Well, you might be, if you've never seen absolute value in your head before. If you have, you already know the answer. Yay, good job. Little clap for you. We're so proud that you have learned a thing. But if you've never seen absolute value before, you might be screaming in your head, oh, it must be -5. If the absolute value of -6 is +6, then the absolute value of +5 has got to be -5. Well, what if I told you that, in fact, the absolute value of 5 is +5? So, well, what does absolute value do? Well, it takes whatever is inside of the absolute value symbols and positivifies it, right? It takes it and it turns it positive. So if it's negative, it turns it into a positive. And if it's positive, it doesn't do anything to it. And it just lets it pass on through and leaves it being positive. So that's what absolute value does. Let's kind of use that within an example, okay? So this is going to be example 1. Right? So we're going to evaluate. We're going to evaluate the absolute value of m plus 6 and then minus 14. If this is what I said, we're gonna do substitution here. If m equals excuse me, 4. So we're going to treat this just like any other substitution problem. We're going to rewrite the thing, but with parentheses where the variables are. So we're going to have absolute value, parentheses, plus 6, close the absolute value, minus 14. And then we're going to take and we're going to substitute this 4 in for m. No big deal, right? So we're going to put a 4 where the m was. Then we're going to, again, just like I said earlier, we're going to treat this just like it's grouping symbols. So we're going to do this inside. We're going to do the parentheses first. 4 plus 6 is 10. So this is the absolute value of, excuse me, absolute value of 10 minus 14. Okay? The absolute value, I don't know why I'm writing so gigantically huge on this particular problem, but that's okay. Absolute value of 10 is still 10. So 10 minus 14. So you notice that we just positivated absolute valued just what was inside the absolute value symbols. This 14 didn't become positive as well. Just what's inside those symbols, and that's important. Every once in a while, I'll get some students that have a little bit of confusion on that. So we're just absolute valuing what's in the inside. So 10 minus 14, so the signs are different. We subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. So the final answer here is -4. That's easy peasy. So that's just kind of using absolute value. Now, what if we see absolute value inside of an equation? Let's take a look at that. This is going to be example number 2. All right. So the absolute value of f plus 5, we're going to close the absolute value, equals 17. And we're going to solve for f, right? That's our goal on these. Now, the trick with this is this all could evaluate out, and probably can't see that like very good on this screen. I don't know why I chose to do that. I don't know. Things happen. This could all evaluate to positive 17 inside there, or it could evaluate out to negative 17. And either one of those, the answer would be 17, right? Because that absolute value is going to turn it positive. And so we have to do a little bit of maneuvering, and we've actually got to split this into 2 different problems. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to split this into a positive version and a negative version. It is worth noting, and I'm going to, both of the examples, I think all the homework problems this is true of, but, excuse me, all of the examples and things in there, it's already solved for the absolute value. But on these problems, if you had a more complicated problem and we had like plus 34 or some other nonsense, who the heck knows, who the heck cares, you would have to first solve for that absolute value and then split it. So that in order to split it, the absolute value already has to be by itself, right? So I'm just going to note that to logic kind of in the back of your brain somewhere, wherever you keep future information. So stick it in there and keep that in there for later to maybe help you out in the future. But on this problem and the ones we're going to do on this homework assignment, we're going to split into positive version and negative version. So the first version is just this same thing. F plus 5 equals 17. The other one is going to be the negative version of that same thing. That's easy peasy. Now we've got a couple of really simple equations we can solve. Let's do it. So this one, we're going to subtract 5. Subtract 5 over here. Those 5s cancel, leaving us with just an F. 17 minus 5 is 12. That's easy. Now, there's a second answer. Because now we could distribute that negative. We could do it that way. Or since this negative is attached to everything, and remember, if there's nothing there, there's an implied 1, right? So we could actually, since this negative 1 is multiplied times everything, we could just divide it off. Just divide by negative 1 and then divide by negative 1. That's no big deal, right? And again, we can do that because of this parentheses there. If that parentheses wasn't there, we couldn't do that because we'd have the addition to deal with. Negative 17. Now, when we subtract that 5 off, still cancels over there, right? Leaving us with just F. But now the signs are the same, and so we add and keep the sign. So negative 17 minus 12, negative 17 plus negative 12, same thing, right, is negative 22. Now, last thing we want to do here is we want to double check to make sure this works and make sure these both work, because it is possible that they don't work. And I'm going to show you one like that here in just a second. And actually you can, well, it's a good idea to check. So I don't always include that in these videos for the sake of time. So we'll throw it in this video just because I said it anyway. But the example of one that doesn't work, you can actually see at the very beginning of the problem, and I'll show you in a second. But we may as well check this one because I said we were going to. So why not? Let's do it. So the absolute value of 12 plus 5, does that equal 17? Well, 12 plus 5 is 17. The absolute value of 17 is, in fact, 17. Yay, it works. And then the other one, we plug in a negative 22 plus 5. Absolute value. Does that equal 17? Negative 22 plus 5. Signs are different. We subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. So negative, excuse me, 17, absolute value. The absolute value of negative 17 is, in fact, 17. Yay, that one also works. Let's do one more quick example. This one won't take long because basically we're going to write it down, and I'm going to show you why it can't work, and we're going to write the answer and move on with our life, right? So this one is, what is this, example 3? Yes, it is example number 3. Example number 3 is the absolute value of b minus 1 equals negative 3. And we can actually just say no solution already. Let me explain. What did we say at the beginning that absolute value does? It takes whatever you have inside here, whether it's positive or whether it's negative, and it turns it into a positive, right? That's what that does. Turns it into a plus. So is there any possible way we can take and we can look at this stuff right here and it can turn out negative? Oh, no, there is not, because we cannot take the absolute value of something and end up with a negative. So if we got an absolute value of something equals a negative, we don't even have to do any work. Yay! We just write no solution and move on with our life. That's easy peasy. Easy, easy, easy. If you're one of my students, check out your homework assignments and all of those things. We'll see you in class. If you're not one of my students in person, thank you for joining us. All of our Algebra 1 course lectures are available for free here on YouTube. You can click the link at the end of this video. It'll take you to that playlist and all of those things. If you want to see what else we're doing, you can check out emberlearninglabs.com. We would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button and the like button on this video. It really helps us out, helps us offer these things to you for free. Thank you guys, and have a wonderful day. Adios.